While the Holocaust claimed in total around 6 million Jews, perpetrated mass shootings and massacres were responsible for roughly 2 million of those deaths. These 2 million murders were what was known as the Holocaust of bullets. The majority of mass shootings usually consisted of a 5-step process. Step 1, the German units and local townspeople would round up the Jewish residents of a town or village. Step 2, these Jewish residents were marched out in broad daylight to a predetermined location somewhere on the outskirts of the city. 3, like the city that they were taken from. 3, the Jewish people would either be forced to dig their own graves, or they would be taken to graves already prepared in advance, usually through forced labor of the local peasants. 4, all the men, women, and children were then shot or thrown and then shot into these graves. The shootings usually took place in broad daylight, in full view, and in earshot of the local townspeople. And 5, the graves were then covered up with dirt as the Nazis attempted to cover up their tracks. While there have been many mass shootings throughout the Holocaust, one of the lesser known massacres is what transpired in the outskirts of the Buchina Forest, near the town also known as the Children's Forest, near the town of Tarnow on June 11th, 1942. On that day, this place was anything but peaceful. It was a place of horrors, and the scene of one of the most brutal and barbaric murders in history. It was the place where over 800 Jewish babies and children from the Tarnow orphanage were pushed, bayoneted, prodded, and thrown into various ditches. Those who couldn't walk, particularly the babies, were put into a dumpster truck. This truck drove all the way up to one of the ditches and dumped the crying babies right into it. Once the children were in the ditches, the Nazis then shot the children into the ditches and blew them up with grenades. The screams of innocent, dying babies and children were drowned out as the shots and grenade explosions rang out. Eventually, the screaming subdued. As the screaming stopped, the Nazis had the peasants cover up the ditches with dirt to try to cover up their tracks. One can only imagine, in the silence of today's forest, the cries of abject terror that filled the air that day as the German soldiers opened fire, shooting and throwing hand grenades into the ditch until the children's screams were silenced. When I first see the small park in the bordering forest, it seems pleasant, quiet, and peaceful. During the summer months, one could mistake it for a small public park. What could have possibly happened here? I think to myself. It just didn't feel like anything bad could have ever happened in this place. Yet, after hearing this story, the forest takes on an entirely new meaning. It's cold, dark, dreary, and dead. Everything about it is raw. You can tell something looks amiss here. It is as if the trees are ashamed of what has happened here. After hearing what transpired here some 80 years ago, we are given letters from our parents and grandparents for us to read, and we're allowed to walk around the forest and kind of just roam around. I look around the blue fenced off areas, the places where the pits were. How many of these kids were old enough to dream of what their lives could be, how they could change the world, how they can help others? How many were old enough to dream, but still young enough to believe that with all their heart, anything was possible? That they can be anything in the world that they wanted to be. That they can change the world. These children were just like me and you. They had aspirations. They thought they were invincible. They wanted to explore the world. They had their hobbies, favorite kinds of food, favorite toys, favorite subjects in school. These children, many of whom were still innocent enough to believe that there can be no such evil in this world and that everyone was their friend, were robbed of the opportunity to live out their dreams. And what about the babies who can neither speak nor walk, who were just torn away from their mothers and fathers and just needed attention, affection, care, and love? Who will remember these 800 should-haves, would-haves, and could-haves? They could have changed the world and made a difference in people's lives. Instead, these 800 were never given a shot. They were never able to see their potential be fulfilled. Their innocence shielded them from seeing what was happening to them. They didn't know what was going on around them. And when the shots rang out, and the oldest ones, around age 9, had some idea of what was going on, it was too late. They died with a sense of confusion. This is a place of broken and forgotten dreams, of shattered hopes, of pain and suffering. The 800 never had a chance to make a difference in this world, to live out their lives full of success, happiness, and joy. They never had the chance to get married and start families of their own and to watch their kids grow up and then eventually have their own kids also have kids of their own. So it's our job to never forget them and to tell their stories. These children they had faces. They had parents. Some had siblings. They had memories, fears, ambitions. They were just like me and you. As a kid, I used to always dream. I felt invincible, that the world was at my fingertips, and that all I had to do was go out and chase my dream and see it come to fruition. My dream was to be a professional baseball player. And for a bit, I really thought I could do it. Then reality hit. But my innocence allowed me to see the good in everything and everyone. That's what innocence and naivety does to you. These 800 had it too. They were murdered in cold blood on June 11th, 1942. I was born 61 years later on June 12th. The closest in dates helps me put into perspective that these children were just like I also once was. I then opened the letters that were handed to me. I read one from my dad's parents and the other one from my mama's mother, who had passed away not even 3 weeks later. After reading the letters, with tears streaming down my face, I realized how proud my grandparents are of me, and of the importance of keeping the memories of those who perished alive, to keep the memories alive of those who perished, and to never forget our history and what had happened here 80 years ago. It is up to us to remember our brothers and sisters who suffered at the hands of the Nazi regime. Why was I allowed to grow up, to live up my dreams and chase my aspirations, but these 800 weren't? It's a question I've pondered a lot since visiting the Vicenza forest. Only Hashem knows the answer. It's our job not to question his ways, but rather to move forward, carrying their memories and stories with us wherever we go, ensuring that the world never forgets the atrocities of the Holocaust and what had taken place in a small peaceful park, or in a small once peaceful park, on the outskirts of a now decimated town and the desert and then a deserted forest.